Hey guys, welcome to Cooking with Class. My name is Chef Gooch. Today we're going to be looking at pie crust. We're going to make two different types of pie crusts and talk about their different applications. One's going to be used for a savory pie, one's going to be for a sweet pie. And to help me out, I've got some of my 5th and 6th period students here today. So we're going to make two different types of pie crust today. The first is a flaky pie crust. Flaky pie crust is really good for fruit pies. It's not great on a pie crust that has a lot of liquid that might cause some leaking, like a custard or a quiche, pumpkin pie, stuff like that. We want our butter to be in like really small chunks around the size of a pea. And so there's a lot of traditional ways to do this. You could start by cutting the butter into small chunks and then get it into your flour and kind of work it with your fingers. Another trick is a pastry cutter. If you have that tool and you can kind of cut up, the technique is called the cut-in method, and you can cut that butter into the flour. We're going to do a different little technique today. We're going to use a cheese grater. We froze some butter, and we're just going to grate the butter straight into our flour. So to start off, get a pinch of salt because this is unsalted butter. And we don't really need anything else in here. I don't put any sugar in my pie crust, but you can if you want. And Andrew, why don't you're going to grate about 12 ounces. A really good recipe, I like to remember a ratio for my pie crust, and that is 1 part water to 2 parts butter to 3 parts flour. So we've got some ice cold water right here, and then, so we'll need about 6 ounces, and then we'll use 8 to 12 ounces of butter. I think I'm going to go for 12 ounces, so 6, 12, and then 18 ounces of flour. Okay, so this is a full pound, so just do 1.5 of this butter into there. Go ahead and get started on that. All right, and then while he's working on that, we'll get started on the mealy pie dough. So for mealy pie dough, you want your fat to be really, really, really fine, about kind of like cornmeal. So the whole texture should be cornmeal. So we're going to use a food processor. This is the easiest way to do it with for a mealy. And then we'll chop up the butter really small and add it in there and just kind of pulse it until it becomes really, really fine, like sand or cornmeal. Okay? Jeremiah, you can grab that knife, cut this butter up into just small chunks. We'll get our flour in here, pinch of salt. This recipe is smaller. It's only about half as big in order to, we only need a single pie crust. Our flaky pie crust, we're going to do a double crust, a bottom and a top, so it's about twice as much. So we'll do this and just pulse it real quick. And then we're going to make a couple of things. We're going to make a quiche, which is like a savory egg pie. We're going to make a really classic French one called quiche Lorraine. The ingredients in quiche Lorraine are caramelized onions, some bacon, and some cheese. So that's probably fine because it's going to get smaller. Let's switch this out. I'll have one of you guys let's just julienne that onion, just like we did in class. And then you can grab one of my knives up there. All right, let's get this butter in here. Go ahead, scrape it all in there. Don't worry about it. Yeah, get it in there. Get it in there. Perfect. That's fine. You missed a little bit. There we go. There we go. Got it? She got it. Okay. So go ahead and just pulse this. Keep going. Keep going. You can hold it down. We don't even have to pulse. We can just put it on high speed. Yeah, hold it down. Just let it go. Keep going, keep going. So this is going to get really, really, really small. And stop there. And this one you can finish completely in your food processor. So now we've got like very, very, very small butter chunks, kind of like sand. I've got some ice cold water and flour all over my hands. Go ahead, I'm gonna have you pulse it while I add some water. Keep going, keep going. And it'll start to clump together. Perfect. Jamal, will you set this out of the way? Take that to the dish pit. And we'll take a look at our first crust. Yeah, that was fast, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to let our dough rest just a little bit. The last thing we want is any sort of like gluten formation in our pie crust. And so we're not gonna overmix this. Once you've added the water, you can form gluten. So we're gonna just ball this up, get it nice and flat, a big disc, and then pop it in the fridge for at least 15, maybe 30 minutes. All right, next we're gonna start working on some of the fillings for the quiche, and then we'll finish that flaky pie crust. We got this one, the mealy pie crust is in the fridge and resting. And so one of those ingredients is caramelized onions. So Andrew, we're gonna caramelize in a cast iron skillet. It's just gonna hold the heat really well. And it does take a little bit of time. What I like to do as the onions sweat out some of their own liquid, just to keep them from sticking, we just saute with a little water. So once they start to kind of stick to the bottom, we're gonna scrape it around and stir with a little bit of water. I've got some set up right back here for you. Go ahead. And then the other ingredient is gonna be bacon. And we are going to cut up our bacon into nice little lardons, which is a French term for just little cubes. So let me show you how we're gonna cut up the bacon, and then I'll let one of you guys cut this up. We're only making a single quiche, so we don't need all of this, maybe 4 slices. Okay, and so we want nice, let's do small dice. Because the bacon is pretty thick cut already, so it's about 1/4 inch. So what I would do, put it into workable little sections like that. And then it's a little bit bigger than 1/4 inch, I lied, that's okay. And then just kind of square it off, okay? This looks like a lot of butter, and that's great. So we've got our 12 ounces of butter with 18 ounces of flour and that pinch of salt. You could mix this by hand. I'm still gonna use the food processor just real quick. We don't wanna cut up the butter too much smaller than this. Jeremiah, can you help me get this in here? Yeah, don't I don't wanna lose all my flour. Make a little bit of a mess, that's okay. This one, I'm definitely not gonna add the water in here. We're gonna come back into here, back into our bowl. Just a couple of quick pulses, just making sure that all that butter gets coated in the flour. And then that looks great. So what you're looking for after you've cut the butter in is that you have these chunks of butter that you can see about the size of a pea, okay? And that frozen butter, we want to keep everything as cold as possible. We don't want it melting from our hands. Okay, let's grab a spoon. Let's get that wooden spoon right there. And if you come over here, I'm gonna have you stir. My dirty flour hands. And we're just gonna kind of fold. So remember the folding technique where you just kind of fold on top of itself while I add the water. And I did say 6 ounces. Sometimes you need more, sometimes less. So we've got some ice in here. We're just gonna get it started. And we're just kind of looking to form like a shaggy dough. And if it's too crumbly, it'll just fall apart. So we are gonna add a little bit of gluten and also help with that flakiness by kind of folding this dough over on itself just a little bit once we get it started. So that's looking good right there. Let's take a look. So she's just been kind of folding the dough on top of itself. Let's see. It's gonna come together. Still a little crumbly. I'm gonna add a little more water. Keep going. And then Alexis, will you grab another cast iron skillet, low heat. We're gonna just cook that bacon. A lot of the fat is gonna come out and it's just gonna kind of fry in its own fat. All right, so we've got our dough. And again, it looks kind of shaggy, right? Like it's kind of, I like to say like a shaggy dog. This is gonna come together. Might need a touch more water, just a little bit. But we're gonna go ahead and dump it out onto our work surface. Get my ice out. And then, there we go. So the way we're gonna add a little bit of gluten in this, we're gonna roll it out and we're gonna fold it a couple of times, and that's going to help make this a nice flaky dough. When it bakes, those little peas of butter that we have, they're gonna, from the folding, we're gonna have layers of like dough, butter, dough, butter, dough, butter, and then into a hot oven around 400 degrees. When it cooks, the moisture in the butter is gonna steam, and it pushes on the layer of dough above it. And then this layer of butter pushes and pushes, and that's how we get that nice flaky dough. So let's bring it together to start. You know what tool I'm missing is like a scraper. Do you want to check in the pastry toolbox for a big plastic or a metal scraper? Either one would be fine. Okay. Yeah, this is fine. Okay. Yeah, start kind of soft. Yeah, it's sticking a little bit, and that's okay. She's bringing us some flour over here. That's when we got this awesome scraper. And so we can still see like the big chunks of butter in our dough. Yeah, go that way a little bit. Yeah. That's fine. We want all that flakiness. We want all that flakiness. It's okay. You know, a little bit of flour. We'll flour this up. We'll flour that up. And then what we're going to do, let's just flip that over. There we go. Yeah, one of these big bowl scrapers, these are awesome because you can scrape your table with flour. You can scrape the inside of a bowl when you're making a dough. And we're just going to try and square this off a little bit because we are doing some folding. There we go. Okay, roll it out just a little bit. It doesn't matter. Just roll it out, and then we'll do a couple of little folds. That's perfect. Yeah, just right like that. So I'm going to do a book fold. We'll fold about a third over and then a third over. So, whoop, about right there. And then fold this half over that. Okay. Do it again. Roll it out some more. Perfect. And now roll it the other direction a bunch. Now let's go wider. And one thing we can do, pick it up, just keep making sure it's not sticking. Try not to add too much flour. All right, keep going this way. And so those big chunks of butter, they're gonna start kind of disappearing. We don't wanna add too much flour. We don't want our butter to melt. So we're gonna do one more fold, and then watch for the gluten formation. You can see it happening because your dough, as you roll it out, it'll start shrinking back. And that's it getting just a little bit tougher from that gluten. Honestly, I don't think we need to do a whole lot more folds. So what we're gonna do next, we're gonna just split this into two. One of these is our bottom crust, and one will be our top crust. So why don't you go wrap these in plastic wrap, get them in your fridge for at least 30 minutes, but as much as overnight is fine. That allows that flour to just fully hydrate with that water. And then so wrap these, put them in, and then grab our mealy pie dough, and we'll roll that out. All right, so we've got our mealy pie dough. We're about to roll that out. First, let's get started on our apple pie for our flaky pie dough that's resting in the fridge. So we're gonna peel these. We've got Granny Smith. You always want a tart apple because you're gonna add so much sugar later. So we're gonna peel them, and then we're gonna slice them about 1/4 inch thick. And for our pie, we got about 8 ounces of, I use dark brown sugar. I really like it. About a teaspoon of cinnamon. And then our thickener, we got about 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. And about a teaspoon of salt. And just mix that up. And then one thing that's really important when we're making a fruit pie, the sugar when you mix sugar with fruit, it's going to draw out all the moisture from the fruit. It's called macerating. So we want to macerate our apples. It's going to pull a lot of moisture and liquid out. But if we put them raw into our pie, when it bakes, they're going to shrink. And you're going to have this like gap in between your top crust and your fruit. And nobody wants that. So what we're going to do, you want to let this sit at probably like 8 hours or overnight. So something you can prep the night before so that it draws out all the juice. Then we're going to strain that off and cook just the juice, just a little bit, and then add it all back in with the raw apple into the pie when we go to bake it. So don't worry, I've got some that we prepped yesterday. Just want to show you guys how to do this part. But she's got it. And then when we cut them, and you already know how, I know, we cut around the core. You don't have to core them. And then we just take these and we cut them into 1/4 inch thick slices. And then just right into our sugar. Okay, so I've got a traditional quiche pan here. They are fluted edges and they have like a removable bottom, which is really nice. Just to make sure it doesn't stick. Give me that pan spray. Am I right there? Awesome. So it shouldn't stick anyways, but I give it just a light spray, and I like a piece of round parchment on the bottom. So that's ready to go. All right, I'm gonna have you roll this one out, Jeremiah. We don't have to do anything special for the mealy pie dough like we did with the flaky, where we're trying to make it extra flaky or anything. We're just gonna roll it out. We want it to be at least 1 inch larger in diameter than our tin. So go ahead, roll that out. If you wanna help her with apples, you can start cutting them while she's peeling. Perfect, give it a little rotation. Keep going. Now for the quiche, we do want to blind bake our pie crust. And so we're going to let it overhang just a little bit. And because it's going to shrink a little bit in the oven, we'll worry about trimming it after we blind bake. And a really good trick to get the bottom of your pie crust cooked all the way is to preheat something that you're going to cook the pie directly on. So if you don't have, we're going to use our deck oven that we cook pizzas in, but if you have like a pizza stone or just even a cast iron skillet, you can flip it upside down in your oven and then preheat it and then set your pie crust directly on top of that, and that extra heat coming from the bottom will help ensure that your pie crust, you don't end up with a soggy bottom. Nobody wants a soggy bottom. All right, let's see if that's big enough. Perfect. And then you can do the little trick when you roll it up. And get it on there. Oh, give me a hand. There we go, yeah. Unroll. And then you don't want to just press it in. You got to lift. Just let it fall into the right spots. Yeah, grab those pie weights. He knows what's next. Mm-hmm. So we've got some parchment paper. You could also use foil for your pie weights, all kinds of things you could use. I've seen some chefs use sugar, and then your sugar gets toasted, and you can pull that aside and bake with it later. It's really great. So we're gonna put a sheet of parchment, and then we've got some beans that have been baked 100 times, and we're just gonna weigh it down, press them into every little corner. Sometimes you would dock the bottom of your pie crust to keep it from bubbling up, but I really don't want any of the egg mixture we're gonna add later to kind of like seep through. It really makes it a mess trying to get this pie out of the shell. So Jeremiah's gonna go walk this over directly on our deck oven. It's preheated, the top one. So go ahead, get in there. So we're gonna blind bake that about 15 minutes. All right, we've got our flaky dough. It's been resting. We're gonna go ahead and roll this out next. So let's do this. Let's throw one back in. We don't need one of them just yet. Put it back in the freezer. Yeah, in the freezer's fine. And then, Andrew, we can roll this one out. It's probably fine. There you go. Now I've got a slightly smaller pie pan for this. It's only 8 inches, which I really like for this like 3 pounds of apples, because you get a big mound of apple pie. That's kind of nice. It's kind of small, so just make it, about 2 inches bigger than this. Okay. And then we'll save our other pie dough. We'll roll it out when we're gonna make our lattice top. I think we're good. Perfect. So get that excess flour off. Again, we want to lift and let it fall in there. There should be enough butter in here that it doesn't stick to the bottom of my pie pan, so I didn't spray it, but you can just to be safe. We're gonna pop this in the fridge so this gets nice and cold. We don't have to blind bake this pie crust. This one takes so long to bake that we don't want to do any excess baking. So get that into the fridge, and then we will finish our pie fillings. When my students did this in class, we just put it all into a big gallon-sized Ziploc bag, shook it all around, let it sit overnight, and that just really draws all that juice out. It's a lot. It looks like too much apple, but it's not, trust me. It's the perfect amount. There's not. Let's get started on our quiche filling. So the bacon is done, the onion is done, our quiche is in the oven, blind baking, so we're gonna go about 15 minutes. So to start, I've got 6 eggs, half a cup of heavy cream, and then about half a cup of sour cream. And this is just kind of like the base for our quiche. It's gonna make like a really nice flavorful custard. And then I said the onion, we've got the bacon. The last thing we're gonna add is some really nice French cheese. We've got, this is Comte, which is a type of French Gruyere. It's really tasty. I don't think I need both of these. Let's grate this one. Yeah, let's do the really small side so that it melts even easier. I'm gonna scramble this together while you guys work on that. This isn't a whole lot of custard because that's a really thin tart. Another method you can do for a really nice deep dish quiche, if you happen to have a springform pan, the kind that you bake a cheesecake in, and you're doing a really thick one, that one you might want to par bake it a little bit more, and then you can make more custard. I really like a good deep dish quiche, but we're kind of going traditional today. Okay, so that's all set. All right, let's get that in the fridge. So our apple pie filling is ready to go. You can see it's already, we didn't add any moisture, right? We didn't add any water or anything. It's already starting to draw all the liquid out of those apples, and any shrinking that they're gonna do now before we bake it. Here's our apples that we prepped yesterday. You can see they've shrunken down quite a bit, and we have all this nice liquid. So we're going to activate that cornstarch. Cornstarch has to boil in order to activate and get that thickening power. So we want to cook it just a little bit, less than a minute. Like as soon as it reaches a boil, it'll be done, okay? So let's get that into a pot, just the juice. So if you want to go put that on heat, just watch it. Maybe give it a little stir once it starts to boil. And then as soon as it boils, just bring it back over here and dump it straight in to the apples. What I like to do, I use this to help me just get a nice straight cut. And we're gonna do about 1 inch wide strips. Keep going, 1 inch wide strips. Keep going, that's good. Yeah, keep going.
Oh, you want to? Thank you for saving me.
Keep going. Beautiful. Just keep going. We want as many as we can get. I like a really tight lattice. If you don't want to do a lattice, you can just put the whole thing on top. Just make sure you cut a couple of vent holes for everything to come out. Yeah, that's fine. We got some scraps.
Do you want me to combine on this?
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get our quiche into the oven. It's been blind baked. We got just a little bit of browning. Oh, whoops. Yeah, that's all right. So that edge of the crust started getting a little bit of browning. We had that overhang just in case, and now we can trim off that overhang. And you just get to eat it. And then we're going to assemble our quiche first by putting some cheese on the bottom. So grab the cheese.
Please.
Yeah, go ahead. While I trim, just sprinkle like a little layer, thin layer all the way around the bottom. Perfect. Oh, this crust is excellent. It's already kind of melting. Now let's put our other fillings in, pass them on over. Andrew, yeah, go ahead. You know what? I got gloves on if you don't want to get your hands all oniony. There's our, oh, nice. So go ahead, add that in there, and then just start stirring it all up. There's our apple pie filling. We thicken that sauce. Just dump it all in there. Just dump it all in there. Yeah, scrape it, and then toss it all together. Beautiful. I'm gonna use all this bacon. I might not use all the onion. I think that's good, right? Yeah, that looks really good. Okay, now there's two things you can do. You can, if you've got a really steady hand, you can add your egg mixture now, or you can walk it over to your oven and then you can pour your egg mixture in. So let's do that. Let's grab a pitcher and we'll put the egg mixture into a pitcher. And then I'll let Jeremiah take this back. It's pretty hot, so be careful getting it into the oven. And then we can pour the egg custard in. Oh, you know what I forgot real quick? Season our custard with a little salt. Thank you. And some pepper. Okay. So that's hot, so just be careful getting that in the oven. And then you and Andrew can get that into. So we thickened that juice from the pie, or for the apple pie filling. So now we're gonna dump this in there, and I've got some gloves on, so I'll do it for you guys. And then I'll get you started on this lattice and show you kind of how to do that part. And like I said, this looks like way too much apples, which is awesome. I love it just piled up as high as it can go. First layer, do all the way across, and you don't have to pinch it in yet, and just get them nice and tight. So we want one layer, one direction, all the way. How many do we have? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we can do about 6 or 7 this direction. There's 5, there's 6. So you're gonna fold backwards every other strand, and then you put a new one.
Here, I'll do the folding.
Then you go back. Then now you fold the other ones, the ones that it's on top of. That's looking great. And then we've got some egg wash over here. We'll egg wash the top of it. That's just a couple of scrambled eggs and a little bit of water to thin it out. And then if you want to, you can do a little pinch around the edge. So I'll let you guys do that. I just use my fingers and just squeeze it together. And then go to the next one. And just. This one's gonna take quite a while to bake, about 45 minutes to an hour. Just keep checking it. Make sure that like all of your lattice is cooked all the way through, and then you'll be good. Let's pop that. Same thing. I want this cooked on something hot to help that bottom crust cook all the way. A really good measure of your pie is if it can come completely out of the pan. So you think we can get it out?
Maybe. Yep.
Look at that. Really good browning all the way through. I mean, we did it. Made 2 awesome pie crusts, mealy and flaky pie dough. Show you how to use them for savory or sweet applications. Let's get a bite. And good pie? All right, there you have it. Thanks for gorging with Gooch.
This has been a production of the students and staff at Lubbock ISD-TV.